What's good, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the finale version of What If Deku Had Ultra Instinct. If you made it this far, then I have nothing but gratitude for you guys. And also, remember, all of my links are down below in the description, such as my Discord server in case you haven't become a member all yet, my channel artist who made the dope thumbnail for this video, and also the merch, which you guys can get to buy yourself affordable anime merch at any moment. That said, I hope you guys enjoy the What If.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
Midoriya, are you done fooling around? Izuku would look at him and say, "Oh, I'm done, alright, All Might. I'm done." As from here, Izuku charges up his power through his body and Ultra Instinct Omen would activate. As Izuku blitzes towards the direction of All Might, who instinctively throws a punch, a very powerful one at that, holding nothing back, trying to see just where exactly his pupil stands in terms of both of their powers. And All Might would be shocked to find out that this time it didn't graze Izuku, it didn't even get near him. Izuku quite literally was able to dodge clean out of the way with such precision and speed that it almost seemed as if he just was never there in the first place. All Might looks back only to see Izuku standing there, and he just is confused before suddenly his body registers what had just happened. Like 17 hits would be like planted on his face, and All Might would be sending flying, crashing into a building, as All Might would pick himself back up and wonder how fast he was moving. He didn't even perceive Izuku moving. He's using 75% one for all full cowling, mind you. And if we put that into perspective, that's even faster than Prime All Might, just due to the fact that one for all gets even faster as, no, not even faster, but grows even more powerful from user to user. So Izuku is pretty much way more powerful than 100% full Prime All Might at this point, just using 75% of it perfectly, mind you, because his body is doing things on his own without him having to think about these things. So Izuku is pretty much fighting perfectly against All Might, countering each and every single one of his attacks, and All Might is pretty much being made look like fodder. Everybody who is watching this on the cameras would be shocked at how fast Izuku is moving, and the camera perception would actually have to be slowed down for everybody to be able to keep up with this, due to the fact that All Might and Izuku are moving at speeds that it's hard for them to track. So they're actually moving at slow motion so that the class could see how fast they're actually moving. And Bakugo at this point would barely begin waking up as he just looks up to see these flashes and this heat coming off of Izuku. It's radiating off of him. Bakugo would grit his teeth, say, "Damn Deku, always surpassing me. Can't ever just stay like things were, huh? You always have to get stronger." From here, he looks towards Deku, who at this point lands one final blow on All Might and would send him back flying after having dodged everything. And All Might would essentially be taken out completely. All Might was not about to get back up from something like that, and Izuku and everybody else watching knows it. So Izuku would then be crowned the winner of the event as he would grab Bakugo, restrain All Might, and take Bakugo to the recovery girl. He would toss Bakugo over his shoulder, and Bakugo would tell him to put him down, that he doesn't need his help, as he begins to weakly wobble towards recovery girl, and everybody would go over towards Izuku and begin pretty much telling him that he is the best, praising him as much as they possibly could. And after this, everybody would pretty much be extremely excited at what's to come, because what is to come is actually going to be very interesting. In about 1 week's time, they're going to be going to the Forest Training Arc, and Aizawa already had everybody get their permission slips lined, so everybody that passed and everybody who failed is going to be going regardless, with those who failed having to take remedial courses at the actual Forest Training Camp on top of their already strenuous training, but yeah. That said, The group of Class 1A entirely would end up deciding that they actually want to do something before they go. They all want to go out shopping together, and nobody's really opposed to that idea. I mean, it's a great idea overall. Everybody gets to hang out a little bit, they get to buy the things that they need, and it's honestly just going to be a pretty cool like bonding experience for that of Class 1A. So everybody agrees, and they then go on the little day. Eventually, everybody would go off on their own, and Uraraka and Izuku would be the only two left behind. Izuku would simply be walking with Uraraka as, they're about to go to some random shop to just see whatever they can find, when suddenly, Izuku's Ultra Instinct quirk just immediately activates, and a man with a black hood over his head would almost grab Deku as he holds him by the arms. And if you guys don't remember what's going on, it's essentially when Shigaraki grabbed Deku by the neck. That's what's going on, except this time, Ultra Instinct, Izuku was able to actually dodge out of the way this time, leading to Shigaraki's hand completely missing the mark, and Izuku being able to dodge what was about to happen to him anyways, then going on to grab him by the wrist and hold it in a position that would literally snap it like a twig if Shigaraki begins trying to move. He then plays it off as if they're just messing around, and he proceeds to walk Shigaraki towards a direction with him, with Uraraka following along. They would end up going to a spot where not a lot of people are there, and Izuku would ask him what he thinks he's doing here, with Shigaraki saying, "Let me go, you damn brat." And Izuku would say, "I don't think I will. You're one of the main leaders of the League of Villains, at least. I know about your boss. You're just a small fry. So I think it's better to just get to the boss up right now than have to deal with you for another couple of months and your weird, wacky plans." Before he then proceeds to essentially whack this man Shigaraki on the back of the neck, knocking him out for the entire day until the police and authorities would arrive and essentially dump Shigaraki off at Tartarus. This would definitely rub One for One the wrong way, because now his successor is essentially in jail. So the prison breakout arc actually ends up happening a lot sooner than it does in canon, due to Izuku having Ultra Instinct. Yet another awesome change that this version of Ultra Instinct, who is the MVP, ended up contributing to. This would end up happening earlier than later, just due to the fact that, they are going to be doing the Forest Training Arc ambush, and they want Shigaraki to be present there. So All For One ends up sending a bunch of troops and actually ends up losing a couple of villains who would actually get captured, but all in all, they would actually end up gaining back more people than they lost, because not only do they break out Shigaraki, they break out other high tier prisoners with very, very powerful quirks that are going to replace Dabi, Toga, Spinner, and all others who joined due to the influence of Stain. Because keep in mind, that doesn't happen this time. So it kind of ends up evening things out, and we kind of have the heroes being on high alert, with the media actually portraying the heroes as unable to pretty much hold their own when it comes to these villains, saying that these heroes are not doing what is asked of them. I mean, they're not contributing as much as they would like. At this same time, simultaneously, Izuku during this next week would be discovering new quirks that he never thought he could have possibly had that come along with One For All. And these quirks range from a variety of, spoiler warning really quick, a variety of Black Whip, Float, Danger Sense, Smoke Screen, Fajin, which is basically just Kaioken, and an unknown quirk, which is the last one that he's going to get, I believe, presumably when he unlocks 100%. But seeing as now, currently in the manga, Izuku has access to about 50, and he already has access to multiple of these quirks, I think that it's a safe amount of time to give Deku access to these other, streamlined versions of One For All in terms of the Forest Training Camp. And that's what Izuku is essentially going to be working on. Essentially, the Forest Training Camp, I don't believe is going to be changing too much. I mean, Izuku has more power now, but does that really affect their bus ride there or their path to making it after getting dumped off by the heroes on the mountainside? I don't think so. So that's why we're kind of just going to be skipping the middleman and jumping straight to when they actually end up arriving at the base and once they all start training. Everybody would do what they would have done in the original, and the situations with Koda and Izuku kind of getting to know Koda's backstory would still end up happening just like in the original. Is it happening naturally? Yeah, because things don't really change due to Izuku's quirk. The only thing that changes is Izuku's training regimen. He ends up working more, instead of on a one for all or his own Ultra Instinct quirk, more on these other, variant versions of one for all, due to the fact that he wants to be able to be proficient at using these quirks. So essentially, Izuku begins working on Black Whip with Sero, works on Float with Uraraka. Danger Sense is something he can basically use as if it's already part of his Ultra Instinct quirk, because now Izuku essentially has a more OP version of Ultra Instinct that can essentially alert him even when he's not using the Ultra Instinct state. He also has Smokescreen, which can help him kind of like cover an area of battle and sneak up on people, and Fa Jin, which increases his already insanely powerful state ×2. So yeah, it's pretty broken. Not only that, but I really want to give him the first quirk, which is something that I'm going to be making up, and you guys are going to see what it is later. But I think that you guys should genuinely be happy with my choice that I end up going with. That said, what ends up happening is essentially the Forest training camp essentially goes, I need to stop saying essentially so much, but it ends up going basically like it does in the original. Koda still falls, the girls still try to get peeped on by Mineta, Koda ends up having that situation with Deku, and the Forest training camp attack what ends up still happening at the nighttime, one day after what it was supposed to happen. So I guess that is the one and only change that happens to the series, but essentially Izuku still ends up being there right at the perfect moment when the villain known as Muscular arrives and begins trying to put this man Koda on her t-shirt. When this happens and Muscular arrives, revealing himself out of the shadows, I believe Izuku would end up definitely covering Koda and being like, Koda, get out of here. I have to talk with a friend. Koda would look up to see Muscular and say, that's him. He's the guy who killed my... And Izuku understands exactly what he means. This is the man that took Koda's innocence from him. And when Izuku hears that, this man Izuku's not having any of it. He gets angry and immediately proceeds to tell Koda that he can stay for this, because he knows that if he was in his position, he would love to witness something like this happen someday. Izuku activates Ultra Instinct as well as Full Cowling, and using Black Whip would grab onto Muscular as he drags him towards himself, and then uses Float to pick them both up into the air, spin him in the air, and smash him into the side of the mountain. Then, jumping from above, activating Fa Jin to essentially land on Muscular using a full power 70% full smash on Muscular that would end up just destroying this man. It's bad. He gets absolutely obliterated, and when Koda watches all this go down, he is just shocked. When it comes to all of the other villains that would have attacked in the original, essentially the only changes that really happen here are the villains that the teachers fight. Since Dabi is not going to be present there, Twice doesn't end up making a Dabi clone. He makes a clone of something else. Since Toga isn't there, she's not the one who actually ends up fighting against Uraraka and Tsuyu. It's another weak female villain that isn't able to kill them, but definitely does damage them. And so when they end up arriving in front of Bakugo, Todoroki, and the group essentially assembles just like they would in the original canon, that still ends up going just like many of you guys would expect. Tokiyami and Bakugo are still compressed by Mr. Compress, and Izuku is still the one who's essentially present when that happens. Him noticing earlier than he does in the original, just due to the fact that he has Danger Sense, is able to actually follow Mr. Compress way faster than he does in the original. And when Mr. Compress essentially ends up making his way towards the villains, he isn't fast enough to essentially keep up and make it to them. So he ends up throwing the marbles towards the direction of new villains that All For One would have sent on this mission. They catch it, and Izuku would use Fa Jin just for a moment, since it is strenuous on his body, since it pretty much heightens the abilities of Full Cowling, and it really is extremely strenuous on his body. It damages him a lot. But he uses it for just an instant to jump into the portal which Kurogiri and all the other villains would have been in. And when he pops back out, he would see Bakugo and Tokiyami, who are both at this moment pretty much unconscious. And when Izuku sees this and turns around to look at all these villains that are there just present, Izuku would wonder to himself how he's going to make it out of this, before thinking to himself that he has the most perfect quirks for this situation. Using his quirk of Smokescreen, he would fill up the entire room, which is the villain league hideout, and he would then begin using using Danger Sense as well as Ultra Instinct to instinctively dodge and attack back at every single villain that was there, pretty much rendering them all useless, because every attack that they would shoot at him, they wouldn't be able to see things. So eventually they would end up using friendly fire to take each other out, as well as Izuku using his own physical strength and brute force as well as martial arts tactics to actually take them all out themselves. This would eventually lead to a portal opening, which would reveal the main villain of the story, All For One, and when he does reveal himself, he comes out clapping, telling Midoriya that he did quite a good job, telling him that now he's going to be taking his quirk and everything else that he loves, before then teleporting all of the villains that were there present as well as Shigaraki away from the area, and then looking towards the direction of Bakugo and Tokiyami, who at this point are still knocked out. Izuku would end up telling All For One that no, he's not touching them, blitzing before him and trying to hit him, but All For One would put up a barrier quirk right in front of himself so that Izuku essentially can't hit him, and then using an air quirk would blast Izuku away straight out of the building, leading to All For One having enough time to teleport Bakugo and Tokiyami away, just long enough for Izuku to be pretty angry at the situation. He would rush in using his 75% one for all state, and All For One would begin using the multitude of quirks that he has to essentially give him the upper hand in this battle. Izuku, using Ultra Instinct, is able to actually dodge out of everything, but him not being able to actually hit All For One would end up pretty much causing strain on Izuku's body, because while Izuku is still very OP, the one thing that has always been a catalyst for Izuku's growth and potential as a hero has been his time that he can use the ability of Ultra Instinct, the time that he can have full cowling activated for 75%, which isn't much. This time would only be that of like 5 minutes, and he already pretty much used up most of it when fighting Muscular, when helping out the squad, when chasing after Bakugo and Katz and what's his name? Dark Shadow guy, and now he used it against fighting the villain. So Izuku only has about a minute left to try to make the best use of this thing. And this is a bad thing, because Izuku is in a horrible situation where he either needs to make it happen now or it's not going to happen at all. He tries using his multitude of quirks against All For One, but All For One just being genuinely smarter and in a better position than Izuku in terms of mental state, is able to kind of outplay Izuku with mind tricks and the multitude of quirks that he has, leading to Izuku having to fight this uphill battle that Izuku just was not going to win. And before many of you guys begin wondering why this is so hard for this Izuku, remember, he still isn't perfect at any of his quirks. He still has that doubt in his mind, and with him being backed up into the wall, it only increases. Izuku eventually, his one for all output percentage only goes down to that of 40%. The maximum that he could currently handle now. Not only that, but his 75% gone. Izuku won't be able to tap into that for a while now, because he burnt himself out, and now Izuku is essentially trying to fight an uphill battle using only 40%, which even All Might could take him out using. So just imagine the villain that's pretty much even stronger than All Might fighting against somebody like that with multiple quirks and more abilities that he could use against, All For One. So he ends up pretty much beginning to get beaten by All For One, and he holds his own. He begins dodging a bunch of the attacks, don't get me wrong, but eventually All For One ends up powering up this massive gigantic attack that he was gonna shoot All Might with in the original, and when he powers it all up, he ends up actually using a multiplier on top of that, making the gigantic fist even bigger than it should be, and leading to All For One actually bringing down his gigantic arm filled with multiple quirks down on Izuku as he hits him with the most powerful brutal attack that the My Hero Academia universe has seen thus yet. And this would send Izuku flying, as he would pretty much dissipate in a white aura of just mass destruction. When All For One would look, there would be no remnants of Izuku. It's as if his body disappeared, and Izuku would lose consciousness of oneself as he falls into a deep void, and from it, he finally arises. Izuku would finally tap into mastered Ultra Instinct for just a second, leaving Izuku more than enough time to tap into the full 100% version of One For All and his full power Ultra Instinct state, thus the thumbnail of the video. And if you guys want a reminder to how that looks, just look at the thumbnail. So once Izuku gets up bloodied and battered, Izuku's finally able to unlock his final quirk. And what is that quirk? Energy Beam. Izuku cups both hands together and doesn't end up yelling Kamehameha, which is I'm pretty sure many of you guys were expecting. No, Izuku's eyes just pretty much are glowing white, and he then aims his hands right at the direction of All For One, who puts up multiple barriers, sensing that Izuku got way more powerful. But those barriers get shattered, one after the other. They just all break, as All For One is forced to watch as his life force and everything that he's worked for in terms of quirks and all that just gets eliminated by some 15-year-old kid with Ultra Instinct and All For One. Better than All Might could have ever done, and it would eradicate every cell of All For One's being. This man is dead. That's it. GG. All For One gone. And there were no news police or stations to even watch any of this happen. So Izuku actually pretty much ends up getting away with this scot-free. And once he pretty much is done unleashing this gigantic attack, Izuku would be hit with the repercussions of using all of this all at once. Izuku would pretty much get hit with the same effect that Goku got hit with when like black lightning struck his body and stuff like that. That's exactly kind of what ends up happening to Izuku, where he falls down unconscious, and eventually a rescue jet would arrive, saving Izuku, bringing him to Recovery Girl, where he would end up recovering for quite a while. By the way, guys, in case you guys keep hearing like my door like make these like loud noises, it's just because of the air being turned on and off. It's pretty powerful in my house, and I use pretty decent editing software to take out the fan noise. So yeah. Anyways, though, what ends up happening following this is about 1 week after this, Izuku finally is able to wake up after being treated by Recovery Girl and getting that smooch, you know what I mean? And eventually what ends up going down is, following that giant altercation that happened with the villains and Kamino City accident and all that, All Might asked Izuku what exactly happened, with Izuku waking up to actually seeing Bakugo and Tokiyami. During the time that Izuku was knocked out, the pro heroes were able to find their location and actually take out the remaining villains that were on the side of All For One, leading to the total annihilation of the League of Villains. And that was one genuinely amazing fell swoop that they were able to, pretty much manage when it comes to the taking out of all these villains and, the entire arc overall. Izuku, having Ultra Instinct, is now finally bearing its fruits, and taking out the big and bad of the series essentially only leads one more villain to be seen, which is Overhaul. And I know many of you guys are probably going to be like, all right, so now we're going to cover the provisional hero. Absolutely not. I'm sorry, I'm not doing it. We're skipping that completely. And we're just going to straight jump into what I actually care about, which is the introduction of the big three. Now, this happens just like it does in canon, except the only major change that actually happens to the story is after Mirio ends up pretty much beating everybody down to a pulp, and he goes towards Izuku trying to do the same and proving to him that he has more experience. Izuku taps into Ultra Instinct Omen, and because he still can't tap into the perfected mastered version at will, he's able to dodge that attack and dodge the second attack that was coming from Mirio, and actually dodge all of Mirio's surprise attacks, which is something that Mirio was simply not used to. It was almost as if he was fighting Sir Nada, who knew what Mirio was planning before even he knew. And Mirio was very, very shocked at the fact that Izuku was this proficient with his quirk. Overall, it's incredible. Mirio never expected something like this from a kid of Izuku's, grade level size or just in general experience. But overall, Izuku still is unable to hit Mirio, so that would lead to Mirio eventually tiring Izuku out, since he does have more stamina with his quirk, I believe. Eventually landing a blow on him, which doesn't knock Izuku out or anything, but it definitely sends him stumbling back, and Aizawa would call the match before anything serious could really go down. So following that, I definitely think Mirio would offer Izuku a position at Sir Nada's agency just due to how impressed he is with him, and Izuku, he has no real reason to decline. He would have gone with Gran Torino, but the fact that Gran Torino is actually a little busy right now with the League of Villains situation that's been going down, Izuku's unable to. So Nada is basically the perfect option. He was All Might's sidekick after all, and Izuku doesn't see any better option whatsoever. So he happily ends up taking up Mirio's offer, and he ends up actually going off to intern with Sir Nada, going off to the Overhaul situation, which still ends up happening essentially almost like it does in canon, where Izuku arrives there And Sir Nadai would end up pretty much telling Izuku that he has two ways of making it in. Number one, he could make him laugh, or number two, he could end up taking a stamp and signing the paper himself. What do you guys think is going to be easier for Izuku? If you chose option number two, then you were absolutely correct, because ain't no way this man Izuku was finna make Night Eye laugh. I'm sorry, but I don't care who you are. Not even Kevin Hart could make this man laugh. Sir Night Eye just seems too serious and like he has a stick up his ass too much to the point where he could even laugh at anything. I feel like he's the type of person to purposefully not laugh just to make you feel bad. Sir Night Eye is the type of person to like eat popcorn with a spoon. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just get that vibe from him. I never liked him, but I like Mirio, so, you know, we kind of have to compromise a little bit there. Anyways, following this would happen, 2 days would go by, and eventually Izuku and Deku would actually be out on hero patrol when suddenly Izuku was bumped into by a small girl with white hair, and I think Eri has like yellow eyes. I'm not sure, or red eyes. No, she had like red eyes. I don't know. But regardless, Eri bumps into Deku, and when Deku looks down to Eri, he's like, "Hey, are you okay?" Eri's just shaking, and she's visibly worried about who's coming out of the alleyway. They look up, and when Mirio sees, he would see Overhaul, to the surprise of himself and Midoriya, since he was actually briefed into the situation just a little bit. Izuku, understanding what's going on, would begin playing it off as if he has no idea what's happening, and he would look to Mirio, who would at this point tell him, "Don't do anything." But Sir Night Eye, because Sir Night Eye was planning something already, so there's no real point. Izuku would look to Mirio as he would tell him that there's no way he's just gonna stand by and let this happen. And what would end up happening is essentially Overhaul ends up beginning trying to take his glove off, pretty much baiting Eri to go back to him, and Eri would jump off of Izuku, beginning to run back towards Overhaul. And in that split second, it was as if Izuku's body, oh my god, moved on its own, as he instinctively got in front of Eri, pushed her back to Mirio, and immediately came in with a flying punch that sends Overhaul crashing into the wall, straight knocking him out upon first impact. This man Izuku instinctively tapped into Ultra Instinct Omen, and then went right into his 75% full cowling state and punched this man Overhaul with Fa Jin active at the same time. Could you imagine the monstrous damage that would do to someone? I'm surprised that this blow didn't just send his head flying clean off his body. And the only reason that didn't happen is because Eri's present, if we're being honest. So Overhaul pretty much ends up becoming, how do I put this? Paralyzed? He's a vegetable now, because that blow is, you're not recovering that from that. I'm sorry. But what would end up happening is essentially Izuku's agency with Sir Night Eye would be terminated early because of the fact that he did that to a villain. While he was a villain, you're still not allowed to do that much damage to somebody, regardless of what the situation was. So Izuku would get reprimanded for the situation and would have his provisional hero license, his license kind of revoked for a couple of months. Eventually Izuku would end up getting it back, and the UA Sports Festival, the UA Festival would still end up happening just like it is in canon, with Gentle trying to essentially, run in and pretty much like ruin everything. But Izuku, as well as the rest of UA security, would be able to handle Sir Gentle Criminal, and what ends up going down after that is essentially basic My Hero Academia stuff. It's almost as if Class 1A was now finally able to live as normal students, just chilling in their dormitories, going to school. The next 2 years would pass, and eventually after Izuku would graduate, he would pretty much go on to become the #1 hero almost overnight. Not really, it takes him a couple of months, but you guys know what I mean, right? Like, it happens so fast that it almost seems as if it just happened from one day to the other. Kind of like how celebrity kids grow up from one day to the next. Yeah, kind of like that. Izuku ends up establishing his own pro hero agency, and All Might just could not be any more proud of Izuku. He changes his hero costume, and Izuku is just a total badass. He becomes the greatest hero that the world has ever known. And yeah, what did you guys think about the story of how Izuku became the greatest hero of all? With the addition of Ultra Instinct at his side. If you guys enjoyed any part of this video, make sure to go down below and smash that like button, as well as share with a friend. And if you're here for the movie version, then comment it down below. Comment #movie if you are here from that. Also, if you made it to the end of the video, that would help me know that you made it. And I just have to give a quick shout out to the top 10 hero members of the channel, which get so many perks. And by so many, I basically just mean early access, as well as shout outs at the end of these videos, but something is something, right? So quick shout out to Robert P, Steamzy.124, and Dead Rising 28 so much for being top 10 hero members of the channel. Thank you guys for joining, and as always, I love each and every single one of you guys. It has been your boy Zether, and I am out. Peace.